Blade Runner was a low-budget movie. They had very little money. Ridley was a new director in town. He had come from England. He was doing mostly television commercials and things. I don't know what else.
Alien.
He had done Alien before this?
Yes.
Anyway, whatever. To do this movie was somewhat suspect, and the producers were even more suspect. And so there was a lot of trepidation about the budget. And so the number of shots we were to produce was going to be a fraction of the number in Close Encounters, for example. And it was a very tight budget for us. But the wonderful thing for Ridley was that we had just done Close Encounters and we'd figured all this stuff out. So if you look at the blimp is almost, in many ways, very much like the mothership. Same lights, same neon, same smoke, same lens flares. And so there's a kinship between those two things that you'll see if you know this little clue I gave you, which was we could hit the ground running and do a blimp off, tomorrow, because we had all the lenses, all the equipment, all the light things, the smoke room, the laser controllers, everything was in place already to shoot the blimp for Ridley at a fraction of what it had cost Steven Spielberg. Yep. And then the spinners, that's one of them.
Yep.
Well, that's a UFO. It's just a different shape. Oh. It's the same light source, same lens flare, same smoke, same everything. It just happens to be a spinner instead of a UFO. Bam, got lots of spinners really quickly. Yep. And so we were able to do a lot on a little money.
But you had to fire too, then you had to fire.
Oh, well, that's another story. The scene I designed for Ridley for the opening of the movie, which we called it the Hades landscape, yep. Was partly based on what Spielberg had talked about, of the cracking towers, and we said, well, let's go get cracking towers. So we went down to San Pedro at night and photographed these towers, which had just not tubes and things, and made them into cutouts in acid-etched brass and lit them from behind and made thousands of layers of them to create this landscape for the downtown LA of the future. And I remembered that I had these huge explosions that I had shot for Michelangelo Antonioni for a movie called Zabriskie Point.
Right.
And we'd shot these humongous subnuclear explosions out in the desert one night for the obliteration of Los Angeles for Zabriskie Point. And we had them in the can, and I was building some miniatures for him, and Antonioni just did not get visual effects. He had no patience for it. He didn't understand it, and so I got laid off. He said, we're not going that way. I'm just going to blow up a house with dynamite and call it a day. And so these explosions were sitting in my vault someplace, and I thought, well, Ridley, wouldn't you like, well, I'm going to have some big explosions coming. I don't know why they're there, but it sounds might look good. So he said, fine. So he got all those explosions for free.
And those are all iconic images now.
Yeah. So that was, another little story. And then this shot right here, you see that building on the left?
Yep.
That vertical building with the slanted roof?
Yep.
Well, that's one of the sides of the pyramid used again.
Oh, wow.
Well, as soon as you know that, you'll realize, if that was tilted at 45 degrees, it would be one of the sides of the pyramid. We were just reusing everything over and over and over because we had to do as much as we could on as little money and just...
You would never know it seeing the film.
You'll like in the movie for the live action sets, you'll see these big columns that we used that are used in some scenes right side up, in other scenes upside down,
yep.
in completely other scenes. So if you go through forensically, you can spot stuff.
Right. And what about, you did Star Trek before Brainstorm, right? Robert Wise, I think that was...
Yes.
So they wanted to do Star Trek the movie. There was a release date. They brought you in.
It's a very complicated story.
You survived.
Barely. I was in a hospital for 2 weeks.
That's what I heard.
The story, I've told this story a million times, but if you haven't heard it, I'll tell it again. I was under contract to Paramount with a company I had started to research the future of cinema called Future General Corporation, where we were inventing high frame rates and simulation rides and video games and digital compositing, electronic digital compositing in 1975.
Wow.
Real time. So we were like way ahead of the curve, and they didn't get it at all.
Yep.
They just said, "What's this?" I mean, it was really that bad. And then all the management of the studio changed, and new guys came in. I'm not going to mention any names, but anyway, they got in this pickle about Star Trek because they took the largest advanced payments from all the theaters. It's called blind bidding. They would get theater chains to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in advance for the right to show Star Trek.
And Star Wars had already
a year
come
ahead.
Out. Star Wars had come out, and basically sci-fi was in.
It was in. It was really hot, yeah. So the studio had taken something like $30 million in advance payments on Star Trek. And the word was out that the visual effects weren't going well because I wouldn't do it. They hired some other guys to do it, and it was a disaster. Nothing worked, and they were up against a deadline of about 7 months to go and had not one shot. And they came back to me and begged me to do it. They literally begged me. And I said, I'll do it if I can get out of my contract with you guys because I don't want to stay here for the next 6 years under contract. But they were just trying to bury me. Yeah. I'm telling you the nasty underpinnings of Hollywood.
How come you didn't ask for like a movie, like a specific movie deal?
Maybe I could have, but what I asked for was to get everything back. I wanted ShowScan back. I wanted my rights back. I wanted Brainstorm back. That was the movie deal. Brainstorm had been developed at Paramount for ShowScan.
Oh, so now it was in your...
And I said, if you guys don't want to do it, fine. I'll do Star Trek, but the day that I deliver that is the day I'm out of my contract, and I'm going to take all this stuff back.
It's mine.
That was the deal.
My stuff.
It's mine. So they said, yeah, okay. And so that was just a fix-it job, really, to me. I never really liked the movie very much. We did what we could with it, and we had a few moments where Robert Wise would kind of say, Doug, just do whatever you want, and I would do these sequences for him.
I like the director's cut.
I think it's good. Yeah, it's good. It's a nice film. And
you're
not seeing all the stuff I said that's got to get cut out.
Right.
It was really bad.
But and I heard like it was the prints were literally delivered almost wet. They had all of the canisters.
Yeah, did you see those pictures?
Yeah, they had canisters that the films would go in waiting for the delivery, and it was that they had to be delivered like the next day.
Yeah. So to finish the story, blind bidding was making all the exhibitors angry. And so the exhibitors had told Paramount, said, we've heard that your movie might not get finished on time. Therefore, we're threatening you to kill blind bidding by filing a class action lawsuit against all the studios. And all those theaters you booked for Star Trek over the Christmas holiday are going to be closed. And we're going to send you the bill for all the lost revenues.
Wow.
So it was a big deal. And that was when, I can't remember who was running the studio at that moment in time. He's talking to me, he's talking to Robert Wise, he's talking to my lawyer, he's talking to his lawyer, he's talking to the head of the studio. He's saying, get the movie done. It's December 7th, which is Pearl Harbor Day. And he said, get the movie done. I don't care if it's any good. I don't care if it has missing shots. I don't care if it has black leader. I don't care if it makes any sense. Get it done. And leaves the room. That was when we negotiated the deal. So
you got it done.
We moved on. We got it done. Yeah.
And then we go to Brainstorm.
Yeah.
Brainstorm was your baby.
Yeah.
And it was about virtual reality, immersive. You want to talk about that?
Well, the big thing that was on my mind was this theme I was talking about earlier, which is to try to create a really powerful, immersive experience. And the ShowScan process, which I developed at Paramount that they didn't care about, was 60 frame per second movies.
No
70
blur.
millimeter. No blur, no strobing. It looked like a 3D movie, even though it was a 2D, for giant screens. And it was a stunning process. And during the time I was at Paramount, there was the chairman of the board of Gulf and Western that owned Paramount said to me, Doug, make a movie that's partly normal and partly in ShowScan so the audience will be able to tell the difference. I said, oh, that's an interesting idea. So we designed Brainstorm. That's how I found Bruce Rubin and the original George Dunlap tape screenplay about every time you put this helmet on to experience someone else's memory or dream or nightmare, the screen would go big and it would go 60 frames, 70 millimeter. So the film would change between 35 millimeter and 60 frame per second ShowScan.
Right.
And this was, I think, could have transformed the whole movie industry if it had taken off. Mm-hmm. But even MGM got cold feet. said, we don't want to try a new weird process. Thank you very much, because we can't get the exhibitors to change their projectors, and the prints will cost more money, and they just got cold feet. So I had to make the movie conventionally. So that was the first big disappointment for me, that I'd already spent God knows how many years developing this process, and I couldn't get it made. I couldn't get Brainstorm made in the process.
Yeah.
Because the idea was that, in a way, the story was constructed so that when they put on the helmet, the audience starts to have this bigger experience. So it's like the opposite of a dream sequence in a movie. In a dream sequence in a movie, it gets all kind of misty and vague and distorted and surrealistic. I wanted to be just the opposite. I wanted to be hyper real. Like what's in your mind is actually realer than real. That was my idea for the movie, and I couldn't make that happen. And so that was a big disappointment. And then when Natalie Wood died, that was an even bigger disappointment. And that's when I just decided, well, I've got to move on. The showbiz thing in Hollywood's not making me happy. So I moved to the Berkshires. So I've lived here since 1987.
Wow.
And I just started. I'm just going to restart my career doing something else, because I just feel like a fish out of water in Hollywood. I was never really comfortable there. And then the Back to the Future ride came up, which was a total gas.
And that is a cinematic experience.
That was a super cinematic thing, and it was just really total wonderful experience to make that movie and to work again with Steven. And he would come in and look at dailies in our little laboratory, and he was flabbergasted, and he thought this was great.
And that's like where the ride is moving, you're immersed inside.
Yeah, it's like a flight simulator, and you're in the DeLorean car, so you're actually in the movie.
Right.
This was the concept of super immersion, whereby you, as a film goer, become a participant in the movie. You physically, kinesthetically, visually, acoustically become part of the movie. It's like being ripped out of your seat and thrown through the proscenium arch into the movie. And that's what the ride was about. And it was quite successful.
And new. That was new.
Yeah, and that was a totally new idea. And weirdly, not weirdly, I don't know where weirdly is the right term, but the movie industry never got it. They never said, "Oh, this is like Millier," or this is like when the train comes through the station and everybody freaks out. They didn't see it as a moment in movie history.
They saw it as a ride.
They saw it as a ride. They just dismissed it, even though it was making billions of dollars.
It's a cinematic experience.
Cinematic experience, and they didn't get it.
Yep.
So that was part of the kind of closure to my expectation that Hollywood was able to rise to some new level of immersion. And
catch up to your brain.
Well, whatever. I'm just saying I have my own little mission, and I'm making progress, but it's not easy because I feel like I'm not appreciated in my own industry.
Well, that's wrong. We all appreciate you.
Thank you.
I mean that. That's from the bottom of my heart. But I just want to ask: are there any questions from the audience? Because Johnny Wilson.
Johnny. Well, the reason he asked why I worked on Tree of Life with Terry Malick. Terry and I were buddies all the way back to Silent Running at Badlands. So we were young filmmakers, and we would meet at the cafe, and we kind of knew each other and admired each other, and never worked together, but we knew each other. And many years passed, and Terry sought me out again and says, "I'm working on this idea for Tree of Life and Voyage of Time." He had two movies that he wanted to make simultaneously. And he wanted to make a dramatic theatrical movie, and he wanted to make an IMAX movie with none of the acting in it. There was kind of three projects. And we sat down over dinner and talked about it, and he said, well, I'm really dissatisfied with computer graphics. And not that he had any attitude about computer graphics, but he had hired like some big lab at Lawrence Livermore or something, like a massive supercomputer was computing the collision of two galaxies. And he said, there's just something about it. I mean, there's massive computational horsepower going on here and fluid dynamics and all these algorithms, and it's the best of the best of the best, and it doesn't look real to me. And what is it? And I said, well, because I think it's the organic, unexpected, non-algorithmic, non-mathematical, unexpectable event. And so we started talking about how we would, go back briefly to the good old days and do liquid stuff. And so we set up this series of shoots in Austin, Texas, on long weekends, because I was doing other stuff, and he was too. I said, well, I'll just come in on a Friday, and we'll shoot Saturday and Sunday, or maybe Monday, and we'll just shoot a bunch of stuff and see what happens. And he didn't like to plan anything. He just wanted... he's very expressionistic kind of filmmaker. He writes a lot of his own scripts, and then as soon as he's shooting, he changes everything and starts extemporizing and telling the actors, well, try it this way. While the camera's running, you hear Terry's voice all through. And he's doing this impressionistic filmmaking. So when it came to visual effects, he says, I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to have some fun and see what happens. And so he'd bring together a bunch of guys over the weekend, men and women, young artists and sculptors and painters and stuff. He said, well, let's get this 55-gallon drum, let's fill it full of CO2, and let's throw in a couple of Rhode flares and shoot it at 1,000 frames a second and see how it looks. I mean, it was that dumb.
Experimental.
Yeah, totally experimental, and damned if some weird thing wouldn't happen for a few seconds of some like a giant intergalactic tornado that would happen. And he called it the Tao. He's a very Buddhist kind of guy. He says, I want the unexpected. And that's kind of his style as a filmmaker. He's always trying to provoke the actors or the lighting or a cinematographer to have something happen that even he can't control.
Magic.
He wants the magic to happen, and he wants the camera rolling when it happens. And so we got all infatuated with phantom cameras and 1,000 frames a second stuff. We actually got a little more controlled than that and did some planned shots. And Dan Glass was the guy who really put it all together. He did all the compositing, did a beautiful job, did all the CGI stuff. I had nothing to do with the dinosaurs or anything like that. But it's that kind of willingness to experiment and try something, and you don't know what the hell's going to happen, but it's not going to cost very much to find out. And sure enough, you stumble onto some really beautiful things. And if you're lucky, you can actually rewrite your script to include the thing you discovered. It's an iterative, inverted process from just enacting something on a stage that fulfills Steven Spielberg's wish. It's something that happens and you never expected, and you write the script and say, we can fit that in over there.
Yeah, set it up.
Yeah, and so I like that freedom. And that's what I had with Stanley Kubrick, and it's a kind of freedom that happens almost never in movies.
Any other questions? Yes.
Ivor Powell? Cool. Great. Well, give him one back. What are you doing? Ivor Powell was a production assistant during 2001: A Space Odyssey. He was there throughout the whole thing. He's kind of a famous guy, and he does his own productions and movies and stuff. And we've bumped into each other over the years. So here he is, just as old as I am, still kicking and still doing something in movies. And he's a really nice guy. So tell him I sent my best regards. That's all.
Any other questions? Yes.
The question is, what sticks out in my mind as things that happened extemporaneously or surprisingly or whatever? Well,
that made you happy.
That made me happy. Well, I got to say that the Stargate in 2001 really made me happy, and it really made Kubrick happy. And it was a kind of a lark to think that it might work. And I made a little test, and I showed it to Stanley, and he said, yeah, I think it'll work. And he gave me such support that I had this wonderful relationship with him. I was at Bournemouth Studios in England, a very highly unionized studio. So the electricians are over here, the carpenters are over here, the greens people are over here, the painters are over here. And I was this 23-year-old kid from Hollywood, and I could go in any department and break all the union rules. So that was what enabled me to build this thing, because I needed some glass from the glass shop, I needed some metal from the metal shop, I needed some motors from the engineering shop, I needed some bearings from here, I needed the camera thing from here. And this whole thing started coming together beautifully. And then Kubrick liked it so much that we just shot for months. That machine was running 24 hours a day for virtually months to make the Stargate sequence. And for every shot that's in the movie, there's 10 more that got cut out of the movie. And that was like one of the most wonderful moments in my life, where I felt that this, as my aesthetic as an artist and the engineering photographic side of it really came together in service of the movie in a kind of a perfect way, in a non-verbal way. It's not about Brad Pitt saying a line of dialogue or anything. It's just its own thing. And I really love those moments in movies.
Any other questions? Yes, Laurie.
I can say that I believe in aliens, yes. Never seen one, never seen a UFO, but I think that the likelihood of life in the universe is going up exponentially with the Kepler project and our discovery that every star has tons of planets, and many of them are inhabitable zones. There's just no question in my mind that there's something really big going on, and that's been going on for thousands of years. And we're in our infancy, and it's like 2001. We're just about to graduate to the next step, and I think it's going to be really big. It's going to be the biggest story ever told, I think. And I'd like to get to the bottom of it before I die or whatever. So I'm the only guy that's in the private world who's actually put a serious effort into scientific validation of UFOs with spectral analyzers and camera tracking systems. And I have a buddy that I'm working with now who's much more astute technically than I am, who builds telescopes and tracking telescopes. And we are going to get to the bottom of this pretty soon. We're working on it. Thank you all very much.
Oh. All right, wait for now. Because you're special, we created a special award. It's our inaugural award, and it's based on the artist Gilbert Stewart. Gilbert Stewart's from Rhode Island. His birthplace is South County, and he is the artist who created the George Washington painting and the George Washington face that's on the dollar bill. And everyone said that Gilbert Stewart paintings brought the paintings to life. Those were what the people looked like. So I want to give you our very first Gilbert Stewart Artistic Vision Award for you, so hold on. We present you, sir, with the Gilbert Stewart, I lost that, Artistic Vision Award, Douglas Trumbull, Cinema Icon.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Berkshire Film and Media Collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I would like to just say one thing.
Yep.
That we're here today with our friends, Karen Allen, super actress, now director, and our young star, Jackson Smith, who's in her movie called A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud. It's in this film festival. It's on tonight at 6:15 at the Moses Brown Woodman Family Performance Center, somewhere near here.
On LaSalle.
At 6:15.
250 LaSalle, and it's like 5 minutes away. It's right near Brown, Hope Street, LaSalle 250, and it's a nice theater, and it's a great movie, and go see it at 6:15.
Yeah, you'll like it. Good work.
Thank you very much. I hope that wasn't